Okay, hello everyone. I'm a middle-aged woman with gray hair, white skin, wearing a red sweater, and very happy to be here with you. So thank you so much to Prasho for this opportunity. So I will start with a few acknowledgements. I would like to note that what I'm going to present is the result of the work of a large and diverse team based in India, of course, as well as in Australia, Colombia, South Africa, Switzerland, and the US. And the team includes persons with disabilities, researchers from various disciplines and various seniority levels. The Disability Data Initiative is made possible thanks to the funding from the Wellspring Philanthropic Fund. So I'm going to use some slides. So Pavani, shall I share I'm going to give you some background to the Disability Data Initiative and some of the key lines of what we do. So as is well established by now, disability is associated with socioeconomic disadvantages, including multidimensional poverty, so deprivations in multiple dimensions of life, such as employment or health or standard of living, and producing national and subnational statistics to document the situation of people with disabilities is very important to monitor the implementation of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities, as well as the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development by national governments as well as local governments. So there is a lack of information on the inequalities that persons with disabilities face across countries and within countries. National statistics offices rarely disaggregate statistics by disability status, and surveys or census reports often focus on prevalence rates. So the mission of the Disability Data Initiative is to provide analysis of disability data to help advance the rights of persons with disabilities and sustainable human development for all. So we have been producing reports every year, and the reports do two things. And you'll hear more about this from Dr. Murthy later. Each report starts by mapping the availability of internationally comparable disability data by reviewing data sets and their disability questions globally, and also across world regions and over time. And second, each report produces disability disaggregated indicators as well as prevalence rates at both national and subnational levels recently, with the subnational level being added using survey and census data. So the reports are on our website, https://disabilitydata.ace.fordham.edu/. If it could be added to the chat, that would be great. So in the next 10 minutes or so, I'm going to try and address a few questions. So give an overview of the disability questions that are used in surveys and censuses as background. I think that will be familiar to many of you, but just in case, then review, give a highlight of what our reviews of censuses and surveys, how we do it, how do we categorize disability, can we disaggregate statistics by disability as well as gender, residence, and age group? And finally, is disaggregation feasible at the subnational level? So first of all, why this focus on disability questions in censuses and surveys? Well, that's because they're very useful for analysis for different purposes, such as resource allocation, advocacy, to inform programs and policies, as well as for research, including to evaluate the impact of policies and programs. So various questions have been used in surveys and censuses, and I'll focus on those that are self-reported by by a household respondent or by an individual respondent, because they are the most common ones. So starting with the general disability question, do you have a disability? And often the answer scale includes a list of impairments such as blindness, deafness, developmental disability, or paralysis. This was commonly used until maybe the 2000s. It's convenient because it's just one question, but it's not effective in the sense that in a context where disability is stigmatized, a lot of people will not answer that they have a disability when they do, due to stigma, or people may have various definitions of disability, and it's unclear what exactly this question is capturing across respondents. Another commonly found question is a broad activity limitation question, such as, for instance, for adults, asking, are you limited in the kind and amount of work you can do due to a health condition or impairment? So again, this is convenient because it's just one question. But however, these are difficult to analyze because it's unclear what exactly it's capturing, especially if you think of doing a trend analysis. If you're looking at responses to such a question over time, if you see a decline in prevalence rate, well, it's unclear whether it's due to health conditions or impairments becoming less common, or if it's because workplaces or the general environment are becoming more accessible and therefore people can continue to work or can find work while having a health condition or impairment. The point of an ADL question in the Indonesia Family Life Survey, where people are asked, if you had to do this activity by yourself, could you do it? So one example is carry a heavy load, like a pail of water for 20 meters, or draw a pail of water from a well. So these are found in many surveys. They suffer from a lack of comparability across countries because activities that people do every day do tend to vary. Next slide. So another type of question has to do with functional difficulties, and they are about particular bodily functions such as seeing or hearing, speaking. They're recommended by the United Nations 2017 Principles and Recommendations for Population and Housing Censuses regarding disability. So these guidelines recommend that at least 4 domains are asked about, so walking, seeing, hearing, and cognition. And it also notes that 2 other domains, self-care and communication, may also be covered in census questions. Next. So in this, related to these guidelines, the Washington Group short set does have 6 questions that follow, that ask about the 6 domains that the UN recommends for censuses. And so from seeing all the way down to communicating. Next. So you have an example here. So the question on mobility asks, because of a physical, mental, or emotional health condition, do you have any difficulty walking or climbing steps? With an answer scale from no difficulty to yes, some difficulty, yes, a lot of difficulty, and finally cannot do at all. Next. So what we've been doing in the Disability Data Initiative is to document whether the questionnaires of household surveys and population censuses do ask about these functional difficulty questions or any disability questions at all, to figure out if persons with disabilities are visible or can be made visible through national statistics based on population data. And we have reviewed many data sets, and Dr. Murthy later will share some of our results. Next. So once we have, if we identify a data set with the questions that meet the UN guidelines, and including the Washington Group short set with the answer scale, no, some, a lot of difficulty, cannot do at all, how do we categorize disability? Where do we send the cutoff or threshold? Who should be considered a person with disability? Next. So we have tried different cutoffs. Next slide, please. We've tried different cutoffs. No, you have to go back. And we've tried different methods. We present results of 3 methods. One is to compare any level of functional difficulty with no difficulty at all. Another method is to categorize people into 3 groups: no difficulty, some difficulty, and at least a lot of difficulty, which combines a lot of difficulty and unable to do. And finally, we also do a categorization of no difficulty and some difficulty together. Yes, this one, thank you. This one, compared to people with a lot of difficulty and unable to do. So we present results for all 3 disaggregation methods, but we find that the second disaggregation, when we create 3 categories, no difficulty compared to some difficulty compared to at least a lot of difficulty, is the most informative and inclusive and comprehensive of the 3, because people with some difficulty are consistently identified to be worse off than people with no difficulty, but typically better off than people with at least a lot of difficulty. So we think it's more inclusive than lumping people with some difficulty together with people with no difficulty. And it can show a gradient in deprivations, which the first disaggregation method would not show. Next. Next slide. So we also disaggregate by disability combined with gender, as well as rural or urban residents or age groups. We do find that this is feasible. So what do we mean by feasible? We want to reach a minimum sample size of 50 for these subgroups. And typically we've been able to do such double disaggregation that may get at intersectional disadvantages. Next. We have also done disaggregations at the subnational level. So with censuses in the 23 report, we presented results at both the first subnational level, admin 1. So that's, well, in India, it would be the state level. And also at the second subnational administrative level 2, which in India, I think would be district level. And so we did this work for last year for Kenya, Guatemala, and Tonga. And with demographic and health surveys, we did subnational disaggregations, but so only at the first subnational level, so at the state level. And we did it for most indicators, but it was not possible for all indicators, as some indicators are only captured through questionnaires for subsamples, like, for instance, questions on family planning or employment. So for these, our sample sizes were too small to do subnational estimates. Next. So overall, household surveys and population censuses can and should be regularly used to collect data and to document and understand the inequalities that persons with disabilities experience, as well as some subgroups, such as women with disabilities. And we now have tools to collect such data in a way that is going to be internationally comparable and makes disaggregation possible, so that we can monitor the rights of persons with disabilities. National governments and international organizations should allocate more resources towards disability data analysis for national statistics offices and other stakeholders to do the analysis for a growing body of data. So we find that there is a need for more data, but there is also a need for more data analysis for some countries that have collected a lot of data as well, and that they could produce disability disaggregated statistics at both national and subnational levels. So thank you so much. I hope I didn't go over